I've been hearing a lot of people out there kind of making bold claims like, we know how to do this for you. We know, these are the exact metrics GEO is ranking for. And I would just caution anyone from fully leaning into statements like that, because just like SEO in the early beginning stages was kind of an unknown wild, wild west field, we are in that wild, wild west territory where it's just exploration, it's data collection, it's assessing the groundwork of it.
Welcome to the Neon Buzz, where we offer marketing advice for oral, aesthetic, and other elective healthcare professionals. Sit back and relax while we share our digital marketing secrets to help you grow your practice.
Hi, and welcome to the Neon Buzz. I'm Garrett, and this is Emily. On this episode, we're going to talk about GEO, what exactly GEO is, which is Generative Engine Optimization, how it affects us, what we see its potential as, and Emily here runs our SEO team and our content team here, so she's on the forefront of this information on what generative engines can do and how we optimize for them. So let's get started.
Yeah. It's funny that you kind of bring that up because we're kind of all on the forefront of this. This is the first time in my career, actually, it's really exciting for me that, we're all on the ground level. Everybody in the industry is on the ground level of what GEO looks like. And I want to kind of start too by clarifying GEO, very similar to SEO, search engine optimization. You mentioned it before, but it stands for Generative Engine Optimization. Yeah. So that's kind of, we're talking about ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, even to a degree, AI overviews as Google kind of changes those iterations. But the general idea is like, SEO first was like kind of born when the internet was born, right? So this is, 20 plus years ago, the first SEO teams were getting together and trying to figure out how to rank in Google. We're very similar to what that process looked like then. So it kind of took them a long time to get to the sophisticated level that we have SEO now. So again, being on this forefront is super cool. Nobody fully knows exactly what this is going to look like yet, which means it's a gigantic playground for experimentation and innovation.
Kind of like modern day digital explorers, basically, like charting that path forward, kind of figuring out what it's going to do, what it's going to be. So you kind of mentioned what GEO stands for, but what exactly, like, what are we doing with that? We're optimizing for these generative engines. What's that kind of like surface level, at least?
You can't talk about GEO without talking about SEO. So when we talk about SEO, what are we trying to do? We're helping you rank higher in Google, essentially. We're trying to get you to be the answer that Google serves up when a user searches a query. Generally, the same kind of principle applies to what GEO is, Generative Engine Optimization, but there's no rankings. So, for those of you out there who have already played around with ChatGPT, Perplexity, things like that, you might have noticed that if you do a local search, for example, try it at home, see how it works out for you. But if you do a local search, you and I were playing around with like the car sales idea. So if you wanted to know, I want to go buy a car, where should I go? Where's the best dealership? What's the best deal? Forgive me, everyone. I'm not a car person, so I don't know if these are they're not the best terms. But just kind of in general. Or say I wanted to go to a cupcake shop. I wanted to go to a dessert shop near me. The way that you would use ChatGPT to ask that question is a little bit different than you would ask Google. Yeah. So in Google, you might say something like cupcake shop near me, right? In our case, maybe orthodontist near me is what you'd be looking up. And then the idea is that you've got, first place, second place, third place, and so on. For GEO, it's kind of totally different. So you might, if you're going to look up a cupcake shop, you might say, my daughter's birthday is in 2 weeks. We're going to have 20 of her friends come over. I need to get cupcakes on this timeline in this budget. Where should I go? So typically people are giving a lot more context to their queries, for example. I saw a statistic the other day that was like Google searches are between like 5 and 7 words on average, or maybe even up to 7. And GPT or other LLM platforms, most people are doing like 80 words.
Wow.
So they're providing a lot more information. And so when you consider all of those factors, the idea is you're providing a more personalized query so that hopefully your business is going to pop up in one of these lists. So it's a lot less, it's like ranking, but it's not really. Long story short, ranking, but not really.
Ranking, but not really. So it's kind of similar to what we have, but it's almost more conversational sounding. At least every time I've used one, I'm like asking full-on sentences and saying, or asking it to do something and giving it paragraphs of information of
Yes.
what to do, versus when I go on a Google, I'm like, car dealership near Memphis. Like 4 words, 5 words. I'm trying to type as few words as possible to get what I need. So that makes sense. You mentioned LLM. What exactly is an LLM?
Yeah, so an LLM is a large language model. And so it's like ChatGPT is an LLM, Perplexity is an LLM, Gemini. Those platforms that we typically hear about very often are called large language models. They work a lot like a human brain works, which is kind of scary. It sounds Terminator-esque, but generally what you need to know is it's going to produce a more conversational-like response, like you said, that has very similar to how I would talk to you if I was going to ask you what cupcake shop could I go to.
Yeah.
Except it would be as though your brain was connected to hundreds of other brains at the same time to provide a synthesized response. It sounds weird, but that's really how it works.
Yeah. Almost imagine if you and your brain were capable of going through every one of the search results on Google in a matter of seconds and then compiling all that together and giving you some kind of almost personalized suggestions based on what you've put into that query, into that chat.
Exactly. And it's kind of like we're going from like a 2D model of search to 3D.
Okay.
Because like you said, every user is unique. And the way they write their responses or their questions is going to be unique as well, which means every result is most likely going to be extremely unique to them in their context.
Okay. And we've kind of been hinting at it, talking about these kind of things. We've talked that it is similar to SEO, but these things are kind of showing that it's a little bit different. Are there any other ways that it's kind of like GEO specifically is going to be different from SEO?
There is no standard system yet to know exactly what is going to make somebody rank better in a GPT response. Something important to just kind of throw out there, though, is that, Google still has 90% of the market share for the search world. So I think, you can start hearing some of this and you can start getting worried. You can start thinking and, your wheels start turning. It's not to the point yet where we need to be stressing out about what you're looking at in your terms of rankings for GEO. It's just good to have an idea on it right now because you want to be on the ground floor so then you can rise with the rest of it. So for SEO, we often use tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs. These are tools that help us determine what literal keywords are people searching in Google and how many times are people searching for that per month. I might type in Memphis braces and it'll tell me there's 90 people searching this every single month. That's the keyword volume. Because we have that data from Google. We are able to find out what people are searching and at what degree. That's data that's available. What's not available is what people are searching in LLMs. And again, because there's such different queries, we may never really have that information. It may all be kind of educated guesses of over time. That's a huge difference. Probably the biggest difference right now is we just don't know what people are searching exactly.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's not going to be an easy thing to figure out when it comes to something like that. It's more like qualitative versus quantitative data because we can quantitate what's going on with Google and those pure numbers, but it's so free form on these kind of AI type tools that it becomes hard to track it and hard to measure things.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I want to hammer in. It's absolutely exponentially more qualitative data than quantitative, especially right now. There may be some time in the future where we can quantify some of these searches in the same way that we did for SEO. It took some time with SEO. We're likely going to be able to do that with GEO in the future. I really like to use this analogy when talking about whether it's quantitative or qualitative, in that it's kind of like, asking Google, where should you take your child to go get braces versus asking your friend, where should you go? The difference is personalization, and it's a high level of personalization. So if you ask Google, there's a limited amount of knowledge Google has about you and your personal life. If you ask your friend knows, if it's your best friend, they know everything about you. They know what, if you are a busy mom who needs a practice that will be open after hours, for example. They know how many kids you're going to have going through. They know what general financial range you're kind of looking for, what experience you're looking for. In a similar way, users can feed that information to ChatGPT to Gemini, etc., to get more personalized responses from their searches. And so it's like kind of an exponential thing.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And that kind of even goes into the different ways that these LLMs are used. People asking them to generate images, however good those images turn out. There's people asking it goofy things like respond as foghorn leghorn or something weird, right? So when we're talking about LLMs, how are people using them specifically just for search? Because that's where this GEO comes into play, I think, the most. Because obviously you don't really care if your orthodontic results show up when someone's doing something goofy with one of the
Sure.
chatbots, right?
We are getting more information every day about how users are using these platforms. SearchGPT is a new platform that OpenAI has released, which is more search-oriented. Perplexity, similarly, is more search-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're going to start seeing people use them more for search in general. And I think we're just going to have to kind of see how that goes. We're going to have to constantly be assessing so that when we do know more, we're ready to act on that knowledge.
So we've been talking about GEO a lot and like different ways of optimizing it and the different ways people use it. But like, how are we approaching this? How are we dealing with this? Because it's relatively new.
Sure. I think it's a great question. And it's very important for your SEO team to be on top of this as soon as it's coming out. So we've been tracking it for a while, really since OpenAI released ChatGPT in 2022. So because of that, we've been poised to, address these issues early on. And what we've been doing in the past couple months is testing out a few platforms, exploring some kind of like baby versions of like SEMrush and things like that that are attempting to do the same, like SEOify GEO, for example, is kind of what they're doing. We're learning what we know, we're learning what we don't know. And I think one thing I want to drive home is that I've been hearing a lot of people out there kind of making bold claims like, we know how to do this for you. We know, these are the exact metrics GEO is ranking for. And I would just caution anyone from fully leaning into statements like that, because just like SEO in the early beginning stages was kind of an unknown wild, wild west field, we are in that wild, wild west territory where it's just exploration, it's data collection, it's assessing the groundwork of it before making decisions. And these platforms don't tell us how to optimize.
Yeah.
Google has never told people how exactly to optimize, how their algorithm works to rank people higher. It has always been up to SEO teams on their own independently to experiment with and to test and constantly try new things as the systems constantly change. So the same thing is probably going to be at play here. I really doubt that OpenAI is going to reveal any super insightful, concrete ways that we can rank higher in these in these platforms. That being said, though, we do have some ideas of what this might look like. We mentioned that a lot of these searches are more contextual.
Yeah.
So I think probably providing a little bit more contextual information on your site or in your blogs is going to help you. If you want to speak to brides, speak to brides who want to maybe get Invisalign before their first day. So maybe her query might be, I'm getting married in 6 months. How can I reasonably get anything to like fix this one tooth that has shifted out of line? And she might put that in ChatGPT. And if you have answered something similar on your website or in a blog and provided that contextual feedback, OpenAI may use your information to feed your user. It could be similar to any adult who's looking for retreatment. So somebody who has seen a shift in their teeth over years. It could be a mom who's looking to see, my 7-year-old is, experiencing XYZ. They have trouble breathing. Is there, what can I do? And then if you've kind of spoken about airway orthodontics on your website, you might be providing that information. So just being more contextual and personalized is going to help.
It goes even to what I think some core ideas behind SEO are, which is, especially early on, people tried to game systems, right? They were like, we can be smarter than this system, so we're going to do these types of strategies. Like keyword stuffing was one that happened early on. And they're like, look, we're helping you rank higher. And it's because you're making bad content.
Yes.
You're making content that people aren't going to like reading when they actually get there. You're making content specifically for the system. So I think it goes back to that idea of you're making content for people. You're making web content specifically for people that you can relate to, that people can relate to when they get to that site and want to actually engage in, versus trying to like game a system. Like, go to the basics of things.
Absolutely. And it leans back more into that qualitative aspect too. Just like Google's main goal has always been to provide content that's genuinely helpful to its users, that is the exact same goal as OpenAI, as ChatGPT, as Perplexity, as all of these other platforms. They just want to help the user. And so if your information is helping them do that, they're going to pull from you more. And that's kind of, it is one of those SEO basics that's going to work the best. And then one note, we're looking at branded traffic too. This is a little bit harder to connect the dots. It would take a decent amount of time and a lot of data collection and a lot of leaning on your SEO team to pay attention to these factors. But if you're getting an increase in branded traffic, it could be because somebody has searched and you've come up in their searches on these LLMs, and they've then gone into Google as a directory to search for your name directly.
For that name directly. That's interesting. And it almost seems like these LLMs and Google are working together in some ways, at least from the user perspective, where they may use this, they may go to there. Kind of like most things when it comes to marketing is you hit people in multiple touch points. It's just maybe a new touch point that's coming on that people need to look out for.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot on the content side, like content you're making on the website to fit those. Do we know exactly how these LLMs are finding the content? Are they doing Google searches themselves in the background? Is that where they're finding this information from?
It's hard to know for sure what they're doing. Again, it's in the same way we don't know how Google works. We don't really know how OpenAI works. And to some degree, the creators of OpenAI, the creators of these platforms, don't really fully know how they work. Again,
it's terrifying.
It's that Terminator over your shoulder feeling, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
We can assume pretty safely that, especially if the user has clicked the internet search feature, that it's kind of scrubbing a general synthesis of what the SERPs page looks like, the search engine results page, maybe your Google business profile, maybe your reviews, because again, it's trying to do exactly what a human would do in terms of their own research process, but just 100, 200, 300 times in the matter of a second.
Yeah.
So think about what your user would be looking at and know that what these platforms are going to give you is most likely a synthesis, a breakdown, an overview of what's already out there.
Okay. Well, to me, what that even sounds like is if you're doing good SEO practices right now, that it's probably going to end up helping with GEO, especially as it starts developing. Because if you're thinking of like your ChatGPT results is essentially like a person that you're asking a question and they're kind of searching those pages, like you said. If you're showing up on those pages on search, on the internet search, on SERPs, then it's going to help you out in the GEO sphere too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're bringing us to our bottom line, and that is essentially SEO is the best tool we have to help you rank in platforms like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity.
Okay.
If you have a solid SEO foundation, if your SEO team is working behind the scenes for you to constantly optimize and to keep your website up to date, to continuously refresh the content on your site, you're looking pretty good.
Okay.
Again, considering that Google still has 90% market share in terms of the search field. So stick with that, stick with SEO, and trust that your SEO teams, I can speak for Neon Canvas, we are on the ball with stuff like this. And we are constantly looking for that next foot in the door to provide you with the best strategies to rank in these systems. And we're not going to say that we know until we absolutely are sure, until we know something. So, and I think that's important. Because we've spoken on it before, but again, nobody knows right now. And I just want to emphasize that we're all on the ground level. And so keeping an open mind about things and being curious is the best way that you can be prepared for the future. Being on this ground floor, having an SEO team looking out for you is your best bet.
When people will ask specific questions, even like some of the ones I've asked you today, it's like the honest answer is it's not fully known exactly how some of these things are working currently or how they will work in the future.
Sure.
And if you're saying you know how something's going to happen in the future, you're either Nostradamus or you're lying. Maybe not necessarily lying, maybe not quite as harsh. You're just think that you know something's going to happen, but it doesn't necessarily always turn out that way, right?
Sure. And I think, for trust's sake, I always veer on the side of, being completely honest and transparent, especially in a situation like this, as opposed to making statements that I can't back up. And there's a lot of statements out there right now, for example, search market share, that people think that they can report how much market share you have in an LLM result. We don't know what that compares to. There's nothing to back that data up fully. They say that they know what search terms people are asking for. Again, we do not know. Yeah. This is highly presumptive information that people are working from. So just take everything with a grain of salt. That doesn't mean don't listen to people who are talking about these issues. Definitely keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Yeah. But just know that this is a developing story and it has not finished yet.
Yeah. Getting close to a wrap up on here, I always, when we're talking about something new like this, I like to look towards what it could be. And obviously these are presumptions. So are we looking at a situation where this is replacing certain things? Like, is it replacing Google, or is it going to be kind of like how other things have developed over time technological wise? Like, we had radio, and then TV came about, and then the internet came about. None of those really replaced the other. They just changed the layout of things. Is it something along those lines, or is it true replacement of, like, is GEO replacing SEO at some point?
I think that's the common concern, but I tend to lean with you. TV didn't replace radio. It just shifted the amount of tools that we had in our arsenal. Yeah. I could see the potential that Google becomes maybe more of a directory, but in terms of local SEO, it's kind of already acting very similar to a directory in the sense that, you've got the Google Maps pack. It's helping people find you locally. So from a local front, I wouldn't be too concerned at all. I think you're probably still going to want for a very long time to come to rank in with, have a good SEO strategy paired with a good GEO strategy. Just adds more to the table. It's a very good question to ask, though. And there definitely will be some changes. But as long as you've got your team behind you, you're going to be prepared for those changes as they come.
I also think, and you've touched on it, I think it's important to note, you don't really know the timeline of when something like this is going to start taking over more or become bigger than it is now, right? If you ask people hundreds of years ago, they would be like, it's just newsprint, right? And then things kind of exponentially increase. You had radio and then television, and things just develop quickly over time. So giving a timeline on that seems not necessarily misleading, but you don't really know.
Well,
right?
it's impossible to predict. So, it's the internet sped everything up so much, and the output of AI is also becoming exponentially quicker. So it's honestly entirely impossible to predict how fast it will continue to kind of grow, especially in the consumer's mind, in the consumer use. We're still in the early adopter phase.
And we'll either have some really good new techniques to use with something like this, or we'll all be watching out for Skynet. So we've got a couple of options ahead of us here. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. For those of you who are worried about AI, I was worried about AI in the beginning. It can be scary, but I think that we're also seeing a lot of positives for both users, for your audience, for personal use, for all these different things. So don't be worried, whether it's on your marketing front or your personal front. I think there's good things coming.
Agreed. In the end, the big thing to do from here is make sure your SEO is up to date. Make sure you are optimizing for those search engines, and you'll be in a good place when it comes to GEO.
Along with SEO, a pillar that you can always fall back on is just good content. Just make the user experience as friendly as possible, and you're going to be on the right track.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Always just thinking about the user. Catch us for our next episode of the Neon Buzz. We're happy you were here, and comment below if you have any questions. Reach out to us on social media. We'll be happy to be in touch with you.